This is Book 4 of John Dryden's translation of the Aeneid. Aeneas has just finished telling Dido about his tale of coming from Troy to Carthage, and Book 4 is going to start with Dido deciding with her sister to pursue Aeneas, and in the process she's going to neglect her city Carthage. After that, Juno and Venus are going to arrange that Dido and Aeneas are wed in a cave during a storm on a hunt they have together. Next, word of Dido and Aeneas' union will spread, and this is going to upset Hyarba, which is one of Dido's prominent suitors, and Jove is going to hear about it as well. Jove will then send word by Mercury and tell Aeneas it's time to leave, and Aeneas will secretly prepare to do so. Unfortunately, Dido will discover Aeneas' plot and confront him about it, and the rest of the book will be Aeneas' response and the ramifications thereof. This is Book 4 of the Aeneid by Virgil, translated by John Dryden. But anxious cares already seized the queen. She fed within her veins a flame unseen. The hero's valor, acts, and birth inspire her soul with love and fan the secret fire. His words, his looks, imprinted in her heart, improve the passion and increase the smart. Now when the purple morn had chased away the dewy shadows and restored the day, her sister first with early care she sought, and thus in mournful accents eased her thought. My dearest Anna, what new dreams affright my laboring soul? What visions of the night disturb my quiet and distract my breast with strange ideas of our Trojan guest? His worth, his actions, and majestic air, a man descended from the gods declare. Fear ever argues a degenerate kind. His birth is well asserted by his mind. Then what he suffered when by fate betrayed, what brave attempts for falling Troy he made. Such were his looks, so gracefully he spoke, that were I not resolved against the yoke of hapless marriage, never to be cursed with second love, so fatal was my first, to this one error I might yield again. For since Zacchaeus was untimely slain, this only man is able to subvert the fixed foundations of my stubborn heart. And to confess my frailty, to my shame, somewhat I find within, if not the same, too like the sparkles of my former flame. But first let yawning earth a passage rend, and let me through the dark abyss descend. First let avenging Jove with flames from high drive down this body to the nether sky, condemned with ghosts and endless night to lie, before I break the plighted faith I gave. No, he who had my vow shall ever have, for whom I loved on earth, I worship in the grave. She said. The tears ran gushing from her eyes and stopped her speech. Her sister thus replies, O dearer than the vital air I breathe, will you to grief your blooming years bequeath? Condemned to waste and woes your lonely life, without the joys of mother or of wife? Think you these tears, this pompous train of woe, are known or valued by the ghosts below? I grant that while your sorrows yet were green, it well became a woman and a queen the vows of Tyrian princes to neglect, to scorn Hyarbas and his love reject, with all the Libyan lords of mighty name. But will you fight against the pleasing flame? This little spot of land which heaven bestows on every side is hemmed with warlike foes. Gaetulian cities here are spread around, and fierce Numidians there your frontiers bound. Here lies a barren waste of thirsty land, and there the Syrtes raise the moving sand. Barcaean troops besiege the narrow shore, and from the sea Pygmalion threatens more. Propitious heaven and gracious Juno, lead this wandering navy to your needful aid. How will your empire spread, your city rise from such a union and with such allies? Implore the favor of the powers above, and leave the conduct of the rest to love. Continue still your hospitable way, and still invent occasions of their stay, till storms and winter winds shall cease to threat, and planks and oars repair their shattered fleet. These words, which from a friend and sister came, with ease resolved the scruples of her fame, and added fury to the kindled flame. Inspired with hope, the project they pursue, on every altar sacrifice renew. A chosen ewe of 2 years old they pay to Ceres, Bacchus, and the god of day, preferring Juno's power, for Juno ties the nuptial knot and makes the marriage joys. The beauteous queen before her altar stands, and holds the golden goblet in her hands. A milk-white heifer she with flowers adorns, and pours the ruddy wine betwixt her horns. And while the priests with prayer the gods invoke, she feeds the altars with Sabaean smoke. With hourly care the sacrifice renews, and anxiously the panting entrails views. What priestly rites, alas, what pious arts, what vows avail to cure a bleeding heart? A gentle fire she feeds within her veins, where the soft god secure in silence reigns. Sick with desire and seeking him she loves, from street to street the raving Dido roves. So when the watchful shepherd from the blind wounds with a random shaft the careless hind, distracted with her pain, she flies the wood, bounds o'er the lawn, and seeks the silent floods with fruitless care, for still the fatal dart sticks in her side and rankles in her heart. So, Dido is absolutely love sick. Line 2 we have, she fed within her veins a flame unseen. So there's just this flame rising up in Dido of love. And she's had such strange ideas, line 14, of her Trojan guest. And so she can't get Aeneas out of her mind. And of course, she doesn't know she's been struck by Cupid's dart. And so it seems unimaginable to her that she could love someone like Aeneas. In line 22, we see that she is resolved against another hapless, unfortunate marriage. After her first husband, Sichaeus, was killed by her brother Pygmalion, she said she would never marry anyone again. And so there's been all these suitors from Tyre before she left, and now from Libya, now that she's in Carthage, that have been trying to marry her, and she said no to all of them. And so at the end of her speech, that ends in line 39, she says, "Let avenging Jove with flames from high drive down this body to the nether sky. May Jove strike me down if I ever go through with this actual plan." So she's confiding in Anna just about her feelings, and then line 40, tears are gushing from her eyes. She's obviously in agony. And her sister, her sweet sister, says, "Why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you denying yourself the joys of mother and of wife?" Line 45. You know, when you had just lost your husband, it made sense. It was good of you to deny the Tyrian princes and Hyarbus, which is one of the Libyan suitors, to reject their love. It made sense. But now, heaven's bestowing on you this chance to have a strong husband for the good of your people. I mean, look, there's Gaetulian, these Berber, we might call them Berber tribes around us. They're dangerous. The Numidians, they're around us. We're in a wasteland. There's these Syrtes, which are these kind of quicksand, dangerous shallows on the shore. It's not a good place. And how will your empire spread? How will Carthage rise unless you do something like marry someone like Aeneas? Man, this is one chance that you won't get again, and you should take it. This is clearly from the gods. And so, it doesn't take much for Dido to be convinced. She is so struck by love. And, the question could be asked, is this because of the gods, or is this because of Dido? And of course, that question is debated. But Dido and Anna decide to go for it. And so they invoke all these gods and give them sacrifices and do all of these, quote, pious things, this pious art, line 89. And we have this comparison at the end, starting in line 95, that she is wandering around the city looking for Aeneas like a deer that's been struck by an arrow. And the deer's running for his life and doesn't know that it still has the arrow in its side. And so it is with Dido. She has been struck by Cupid's dart and is wandering around the city in terrible anguish because of her love. And she's looking for Aeneas. Picking up on line 101. And now she leads the Trojan chief along the lofty walls amidst the busy throng, displays her Tyrian wealth and rising town, which love without his labor makes his own. This pomp she shows to tempt her wandering guest. Her faltering tongue forbids to speak the rest. When day declines, the feasts renew the night. Still on his face she feeds her famished sight. She longs again to hear the prince relate his own adventures and the Trojan fate. He tells it o'er and o'er, but still in vain, for still she begs to hear it once again. The hearer on the speaker's mouth depends, and thus the tragic story never ends. Then, when they part, when Phoebe's paler light withdraws, and falling stars to sleep invite, she last remains, when every guest is gone, sits on the bed he pressed, and sighs alone. Absent, her absent hero sees and hears, or in her bosom young Ascanius bears, and seeks the father's image in the child, if love by likeness might be so beguiled. Meantime the rising towers are at a stand. No labors exercise the youthful band, nor use of arts, nor toils of arms they know. The mole is left unfinished to the foe, the mounds, the works, the walls, neglected lie, short of their promised height, that seemed to threat the sky. But when imperial Juno from above saw Dido fettered in the chains of love, hot with the venom which her veins inflamed, and by no sense of shame to be reclaimed, with soothing words to Venus she begun. High praises, endless honors you have won, and mighty trophies with your worthy son. Two gods a silly woman have undone. Nor am I ignorant you both suspect this rising city, which my hands erect. But shall celestial discord never cease? It is better ended in a lasting peace. You stand possessed of all your soul desired. Poor Dido with consuming love is fired. Your Trojan with my Tyrian let us join, so Dido shall be yours, Aeneas mine. One common kingdom, one united line. Eliza shall a Dardan lord obey, and lofty Carthage for a dower convey. Then Venus, who her hidden fraud descried, which would the sceptre of the world misguide to Libyan shores, thus artfully replied. Who but a fool would wars with Juno choose, and such alliance and such gifts refuse, if fortune with our joint desires comply? The doubt is all from Jove and destiny, lest he forbid with absolute command to mix the people in one common land. Or will the Trojan and the Tyrian line in lasting leagues and sure succession join? But you, the partner of his bed and throne, may move his mind, my wishes are your own. Mine, said imperial Juno, be the care. Time urges now to perfect this affair. Attend my counsel in the secret share. When next the sun his rising light displays, and gilds the world below with purple rays, the queen Aeneas and the Tyrian court shall to the shady woods for sylvan game resort. There, while the huntsmen pitch their toils around, and cheerful horns from side to side resound, a pitchy cloud shall cover all the plain with hail and thunder and tempestuous rain. The fearful train shall take their speedy flight dispersed, and all involved in gloomy night. One cave a grateful shelter shall afford to the fair princess and the Trojan lord. I will myself the bridal bed prepare, if you to bless the nuptials will be there. So shall their loves be crowned with due delights, and Hymen shall be present at the rites. The queen of love consents, and closely smiles at her vain project and discovered wiles. All right, so Dido is in agony still. She's taking Aeneas all around Carthage and trying to show off the wealth that she has, the city that she has built to try to entice her guest Aeneas. And she's not saying anything else about how she's madly in love with him or anything like that. But every chance she gets, she has him over at night and asks him to tell the story again and again and again. And it's like this tragic story of Aeneas's departure from Troy and everything that's happened since has never ended, line 114. And so we get this, this tells you how serious it is, right? Every time that the night ends and everybody leaves, Dido stays up and she looks at the imprint of Aeneas's body that he left in the couch or the bed or wherever he was sitting. So Aeneas was there, and she just stares at it. Or anytime she has Ascanius, Aeneas' son, on her lap, she stares at Ascanius just to try to see if she can believe that it's Aeneas. If he looks enough like his father that it's like, my love is satisfied because I have Aeneas in my lap. So she is completely obsessed. And Juno looks down and she sees that Dido is helplessly in love, and in this section from 123 to 128, we see she's completely neglecting to build Carthage, the mounds and the works and the walls and everything. The towers aren't being built. All of these things have been left off because Dido is just consumed with following Aeneas around and being in love, right? So Imperial Juno looks down and sees Dido this way and approaches Venus and says, your son has undying honor. And I know you did it, Dido. You and Cupid, you two gods, have undone her. But I'll tell you what, she is so in love with Aeneas. Why doesn't Aeneas just stay? Why doesn't Aeneas marry Dido, and Dido could be so happy, Aeneas would be so happy, and we could finally be at peace. We wouldn't be warring against each other. Well, Venus knows exactly what Juno is doing. Juno is trying to prevent Rome from being built because she knows the prophecy that Rome will destroy Carthage one day. And so she artfully replies, oh, I completely agree, Juno. What a great idea, and who would be foolish enough to try to resist your will anyway? I'll tell you what, it's really all up to Jove, your husband, Jupiter. And if you can convince him, and why wouldn't you be able to let this alone and keep Rome from being built, then we're golden. So let's try to do this. So Juno rubs her hands together, so to speak, and says, okay, this is what we're going to do. Tomorrow, we will have Aeneas and Dido and lots of other people go out on this hunt, this sylvan, which means wooded, like foresty, game. And we're going to bring a storm upon them, these dark, pitchy clouds. It's going to hail and thunder and be so intense that everybody will run for their lives, and we will give a nice, cozy cave for Aeneas and Dido to take shelter in. And they will, and we will prepare the bridal bed there. And you leave that part to me, and they will be wed. Venus, the queen of love, consents and smiles because she knows that this is not going to last. Line 182. The rosy morn was risen from the main, and horns and hounds awake the princely train. They issue early through the city gate, where the more wakeful huntsmen ready wait, with nets and toils and darts, beside the force of Spartan dogs and swift Massilian horse. The Tyrian peers and officers of state for the slow queen in antechambers wait. Her lofty courser in the court below, who his majesty rider seems to know, proud of his purple trappings, paws the ground, and champs the golden bit, and spreads the foam around. The queen at length appears. On either hand the brawny guards in martial order stand. A flowered samar with golden fringe she wore, and at her back a golden quiver bore. Her flowing hair a golden caul restrains, a golden clasp the Tyrian robe sustains. Then young Ascanius, with a sprightly grace, leads on the Trojan youth to view the chase. But far above the rest in beauty shines the great Aeneas. The troop he joins, like fair Apollo, when he leaves the frost of wintry Xanthus, and the Lycian coast, when to his native Delos he resorts, ordains the dances and renews the sports, where painted Scythians mix with Cretan bands, before the joyful altars join their hands. Himself, on Cynthus walking, sees below the merry madness of the sacred show. Green wreaths of bays his length of hair enclose, a golden fillet binds his awful brows, his quiver sounds. Not less the prince is seen in manly presence or in lofty mien. Now had they reached the hills, and stormed the seat of savage beasts, and dens, their last retreat. The cry pursues the mountain goats. They bound from rock to rock and keep the craggy ground. Quite otherwise the stags, a trembling train, and herds unsingled, scour the dusty plain, and a long chase in open view maintain. The glad Ascanius, as his courser guides, spurs through the vale, and these and those outrides. His horse's flanks and sides are forced to feel the clanking lash and goring of the steel. Impatiently he views the feeble prey, wishing some nobler beast to cross his way, and rather would the tusky boar attend, or see the tawny lion downward bend. Meantime the gathering clouds obscure the skies, from pole to pole the forky lightning flies, the rattling thunders roll, and Juno pours a wintry deluge down in sounding showers. The company dispersed to converts ride, and seek the homely cots or mountain's hollow side. The rapid rains descending from the hills, the rolling torrents raise the creeping rills. The queen and prince, as love or fortune guides, one common cavern in her bosom hides. Then first the trembling earth the signal gave, and flashing fires enlightened all the cave. Hell from below, and Juno from above, and howling nymphs were conscious of their love. From this ill-omened hour in time arose the bate and death, and all succeeding woes. The queen, whom sense of honor could not move, no longer made a secret of her love, but called it marriage by that specious name, to veil the crime and sanctify the shame. The loud report through Libyan cities go. Fame, the great ill from small beginnings, grows swift from the first, and every moment brings new vigor to her flights, new pinions to her wings. Soon grows the pygmy to gigantic size, her feet on earth, her forehead in the skies. Enraged against the gods, revengeful earth produced her last of the Titanian birth. Swift is her walk, more swift her winged haste, a monstrous phantom, horrible and vast, as many plumes as raise her lofty flight, so many piercing eyes enlarge her sight. Millions of opening mouths to fame belong, and every mouth is furnished with a tongue, and round with listening ears the flying plague is hung. She fills the peaceful universe with cries, no slumbers ever close her wakeful eyes. By day from lofty towers her head she shews, and spreads through trembling crowds disastrous news. With court informers haunts, and royal spies, things done relates, not done she feigns, and mingles truth with lies. Talk is her business, and her chief delight to tell of prodigies and cause affright. She fills the people's ears with Dido's name, who, lost to honor and the sense of shame, admits into her throne and nuptial bed a wandering guest, who from his country fled. Whole days with him she passes in delights, and wastes in luxury long winter nights. Forgetful of her fame and royal trust, dissolved in ease, abandoned to her lust, the goddess widely spreads the loud report, and flies at length to King Hyarba's court. All right, so this is a busy section here. So line 182, the rosy morn rises from the main. So this is the day that Juno will make things happen. And so everyone's ready. They're getting on their coursers, meaning their horses. And Dido is dressed to the nines. She has gold and everything, right? This flowing samar, which is this long dress, golden fringe, all of this gold, right? Ascanius comes out. He's looking sprightly. He leads the youth. And then Aeneas, man, his beauty shines far above everybody else's. He is so beautiful. He is like fair Apollo. When Apollo goes and sees this festival that the Scythians put on, and Apollo is a good-looking god, that's how good and godly Aeneas looks. And so they go out. They start hunting these goats and these stags. And Ascanius, he's kind of like, yeah, I wish we could be hunting something more interesting, like a boar or a lion. And then all of a sudden, lightning strikes. And there's all these dark clouds, and this deluge pours down on all of the party. And just as planned, there's one bright, glowing cave waiting for Aeneas and Dido, and they go in. And we're told on 243 that hell from below and Juno from above and howling nymphs all know that Dido and Aeneas are laying together in love, right? So they are consummating what Dido is going to call a marriage by that specious name. Specious meaning it seems true, but it's not. It's not true. It's not marriage. And the reason she's doing it, 250, is to veil the crime and sanctify the shame. So she's trying to justify her actions. Well, we're married and it's so wonderful. But they're not. And so everything she's doing is immoral and she knows it. And so she calls it marriage to try to hide her shame. And then we get this long description of fame, which would be this kind of personification of rumor. And Earth, Gaia, created this monstrous being that goes around and plagues people's lives, fills the universe with cries. She goes here and there. She ruins everything. And we're given all these details about her. But through 275, she fills the peoples with Dido's name. And so everybody starts hearing the rumor that Dido has accepted this Trojan guest into her bed when she has rejected everyone else who has tried to marry her. She is wasting long days with Aeneas in pure delight, neglecting all of Carthage and all of her people, and it's not okay in the people's minds, and especially not in King Hyarba's mind. So we will turn to him in 285. When first possessed with this unwelcome news, whom did he not of men and gods accuse? This prince from ravished Garamantis born, 100 temples did with spoils adorn in Ammon's honor, his celestial sire. Ammon would be a Libyan deity, but the Greeks called him Zeus Ammon. They saw him as equivalent to Zeus. And so this is essentially offering to Jove. 100 altars fed with wakeful fire, and through his vast dominions priests ordained, whose watchful care these holy rites maintained. The gates and columns were with garlands crowned, and blood of victim beasts enriched the ground. He, when he heard a fugitive could move the Tyrian princess, who disdained his love, his breast with fury burned, his eyes with fire, mad with despair, impatient with desire. Then on the sacred altars pouring wine, he thus with prayers implored his sire divine. Great Jove, propitious to the Moorish race, who feast on painted beds, with offerings grace thy temples, and adore thy power divine, with blood of victims, and with sparkling wine. Seest thou not this? Or do we fear in vain thy boasted thunder and thy thoughtless rain? Do thy broad hands the forky lightnings lance? Thine are the bolts, or the blind work of chance? A wandering woman builds within our state a little town bought at an easy rate. She pays me homage, and my grants allow a narrow space of Libyan lands to plough. Yet, scorning me, by passion blindly led, admits a banished Trojan to her bed. And now this other Paris, with his train of conquered cowards, must in Afric reign. Whom what they are, their looks and garb confess, their locks with oil perfume, their Lydian dress. He takes the spoil, enjoys the princely dame, and I, rejected I, adore an empty name. His vows in haughty terms he thus preferred, and held his altar's horns. The mighty thunderer heard, then cast his eyes on Carthage, where he found the lustful pair in lawless pleasure drowned. Lost in their loves, insensible of shame, and both forgetful of their better fame. He calls Kylenius, and the god attends, by whom his menacing command he sends. Go, mount the western winds and cleave the sky, then with a swift descent to Carthage fly. There find the Trojan chief, who wastes his days in slothful naught and inglorious ease, nor minds the future city given by fate. To him this message from my mouth relate. Not so fair Venus hoped, when twice she won thy life with prayers, nor promised such a son. Hers was a hero destined to command a martial race, and rule the Latian land, who should his ancient line from Teucer draw, and on the conquered world impose the law. If glory cannot move a mind so mean, nor future praise from fading pleasure wean, yet why should he defraud his son of fame, and grudge the Romans their immortal name? What are his vain designs? What hopes he more from his long lingering on a hostile shore, regardless to redeem his honor lost, and for his race to gain the Ausonian coast? Bid him with speed the Tyrian court forsake, with this command the slumbering warrior wake. Hermes obeys, with golden pinions binds his flying feet, and mounts the western winds. And whether o'er the seas or earth he flies, with rapid force they bear him down the skies. But first he grasps within his awful hand the mark of sovereign power, his magic wand. With this he draws the ghosts from hollow graves, with this he drives them down the Stygian waves, with this he seals in sleep the wakeful sight, and eyes, though closed in death, restores to light. Thus armed, the god begins his airy race, and drives the racking clouds along the liquid space. Now sees the tops of Atlas as he flies, whose brawny back supports the starry skies. Atlas, whose head, with piny forests crowned, is beaten by the winds, with foggy vapors bound. Snows hide his shoulders. From beneath his chin the founts of rolling streams their race begin. A beard of ice on his large breast depends. Here poised upon his wings the god descends. Then, rested thus, he from the towering height plunged downward with precipitated flight, lights on the seas and skims along the flood. As waterfowl, who seek their fishy food, less and yet less to distant prospects show, by turns they dance aloft and dive below. Like these the steerage of his wings he plies, and near the surface of the water flies, till having passed the seas and crossed the sands, he closed his wings and stooped on Libyan lands. Where shepherds once were housed in homely sheds, now towers within the clouds advance their heads. Arriving there, he found the Trojan prince new ramparts raising for the town's defense. A purple scarf with gold embroidered o'er, Queen Dido's gift, about his waist he wore. A sword with glittering gems diversified, for ornament, not use, hung idly by his side. Okay, so this section starts with King Hyarba, and he hears the news about Dido becoming, quote, married to Aeneas. And so he immediately is enraged and goes and sacrifices and then complains to Jove, who he calls Ammon. Ammon, you love the Moorish race, you've always favored us, and yet you are letting this awful thing happen. I'm disgraced here, and I am enraged, and do you not see what's going on? Do we fear you in vain? Is all of this praising you just for nothing because you're not really powerful? How are you letting this happen? I let this woman, Dido, build Carthage on my land. I could have kicked her out, but no. And now, after all my kindness, she is letting a Trojan, a second Paris, into her bed. I see what's happening. So what? Is he going to come and reign in Africa as well? After all I have done piously for you, and after all that I've done for her. No, let it not be so. In line 320, I adore an empty name. So I guess, Jove, I'm worshiping you for nothing. Well, Jove hears that. And so he looks down and he sees Aeneas and Dido doing exactly what Hyarba said they were doing. So, whoa, not okay, right? As soon as Jove sees this, he knows what Aeneas is meant to be doing. Well, he knows what Aeneas' fate is, and Aeneas knows what Aeneas' fate is. So he calls Kylenius, which is another name for Mercury. Hey, Kylenius, go down there now and tell him this man who's wasting his days, line 332, in slothful naught. He's not doing anything with his time, and he's wasting it in inglorious ease. This is not what Venus hoped for in a son. She hoped for a hero who is destined to command a martial race, a military people who would rule the Latian lands. She was proud to have a son who would be great, and you are wasting your life away. You were meant to, line 340, conquer the world and impose the law, bring order to the world. And, by the way, Mercury, Kylenius, if this doesn't work, tell him that his son is going to be robbed of his greatness as well. And that should do the trick. If he won't do it for himself, at least he should do it for his son. So, Hermes goes down, he gets ready, he gets all his stuff together, and he doesn't forget his magic wand. And he goes, he sees Atlas. Atlas is holding up the sky on his shoulders. He has these trees on his head and all of this fog and ice. And then he goes down, and he's like a waterfowl skimming the surface. And, in fact, in 377, He even kind of disguises himself as a bird, and he's going to come and appear to Aeneas, and he finds him, sure enough, and he is building something, new ramparts raising for the town's defense, so that's good, but he's wearing this purple scarf that Queen Dido gave him, and he has this sword at his side, doing nothing. Of course, it's just there for show, because he's certainly not using it for anything important. Line 389. Then thus with winged words the god began, resuming his own shape, so he becomes Mercury again. He's no longer this bird. Degenerate man, thou woman's property, what makest thou here these foreign walls and Tyrian towers to rear, forgetful of thy own? All-powerful Jove, who sways the world below and heaven above, has sent me down with this severe command. What means thy lingering in the Libyan land? If glory cannot move a mind so mean, nor future praise from flitting pleasure wean, regard the fortunes of thy rising heir. The promised crown let young Ascanius wear, to whom the Ausonian scepter and the state of Rome's imperial name is owed by fate. So spoke the god, and speaking took his flight, involved in clouds and vanished out of sight. The pious prince was seized with sudden fear, mute was his tongue, and upright stood his hair. Revolving in his mind the stern command, he longs to fly and loathes the charming land. What should he say? Or how should he begin? What course, alas, remains to steer between the offended lover and the powerful queen? This way and that he turns his anxious mind, and all expedients tries, and none can find. Fixed on the deed, but doubtful of the means, after long thought to this advice he leans. 3 chiefs he calls, commands them to repair the fleet, and ship their men with silent care. Some plausible pretense he bids them find, to colour what in secret he designed. Himself, meantime, the softest hours would choose, before the lovesick lady heard the news, and move her tender mind by slow degrees, to suffer what the sovereign power decrees. Jove will inspire him when and what to say. They hear with pleasure, and with haste obey. But soon the queen perceives the thin disguise. What arts can blind a jealous woman's eyes? So Mercury comes down, and I love this. Degenerate man, thou woman's property, he begins his speech to Aeneas with. So immediately, big diss, right? It says, why are you building these foreign walls, these Tyrian towers, when you have your own Roman walls to build in Italy? And he very much repeats exactly what Jove told him to repeat. And, you're robbing your son. He's supposed to rule all of Rome. And then he leaves. And the pious prince was seized with sudden fright. Couldn't talk. He was terrified. And he knew he had to obey. But what to say to Dido? She's so in love. She's going to be absolutely crushed by this. So he's turning all of these ideas over in his mind. And he finally decides this is the best course of action. I'm going to secretly get ready. I'm going to tell my men to get on their ships and to prepare the boats. And then I'm going to let Jove guide me in the perfect time and the perfect way to tell Dido that I have to go now, that I can't stay. Unfortunately, line 426, it doesn't take very long for Dido to perceive what's going on. And Virgil gives us this note. What arts can blind a jealous woman's eyes? There was no way that she wasn't going to see, being a jealous woman for Aeneas, what he was doing. Line 428. She was the first to find the secret fraud before the fatal news was blazed abroad. Love the first motions of the lover hears, quick to presage, and even in safety fears. Nor impious fame was wanting to report the ships repaired, the Trojans' thick resort, and purpose to forsake the Tyrian court. Frantic with fear, impatient of the wound, and impotent of mind, she roves the city round. Less wild the Bacchanalian dames appear, when from afar their nightly god they hear, and howl about the hills and shake their wreathy spear. At length she finds the dear perfidious man, prevents his formed excuse, and thus began. Base and ungrateful, could you hope to fly and undiscovered scape a lover's eye? Nor could my kindness your compassion move, nor plighted vows, nor dearer bands of love? Or is the death of a despairing queen not worth preventing, though too well foreseen? Even when the wintry winds command your stay, you dare the tempests and defy the sea. False as you are, suppose you were not bound to lands unknown, and foreign coasts to sound. Were Troy restored in Priam's happy reign, now durst you tempt for Troy the raging main? See whom you fly. Am I the foe you shun? Now by those holy vows so late begun, by this right hand, since I have nothing more to challenge but the faith you gave before, I beg you by these tears to truly shed by the new pleasures of our nuptial bed. If ever Dido, when you most were kind, were pleasing in your eyes or touched your mind, by these my prayers, if prayers may yet have place, pity the fortunes of a falling race. For you I have provoked the tyrant's hate, incensed the Libyan and the Tyrian state. For you alone I suffer in my fame, bereft of honor and exposed to shame. Whom have I now to trust, ungrateful guest? That only name remains of all the rest. What have I left, or whither can I fly? Must I attend Pygmalion's cruelty, or till Hyarba shall in triumph lead, a queen that proudly scorned his proffered bed? Had you deferred at least your hasty flight, and left behind some pledge of our delight, some babe to bless the mother's mournful sight, some young Aeneas to supply your place, whose features might express his father's face, I should not then complain to live bereft of all my husband, or be wholly left. Here paused the queen. Unmoved, he holds his eyes by Jove's command, nor suffered love to rise, though heaving in his heart, and thus at length replies. Fair queen, you never can enough repeat your boundless favors, or I own my debt. Nor can my mind forget Eliza's name, while vital breath inspires this mortal frame. This only let me speak in my defense. I never hoped a secret flight from hence, much less pretended to the lawful claim of sacred nuptials, or a husband's name. For if indulgent heaven would leave me free, and not submit my life to fate's decree, my choice would lead me to the Trojan shore, those relics to review, their dust adore, and Priam's ruined palace to restore. But now the Delphian oracle commands, and fate invites me to the Latian lands. That is the promised place to which I steer, and all my vows are terminated there. If you, a Tyrian and a stranger born, with walls and towers a Libyan town adorn, why may not we, like you, a foreign race, like you, seek shelter in a foreign place? As often as the night obscures the skies with humid shades, or twinkling stars arise, and Chryse's angry ghost in dreams appears, chides my delay and fills my soul with fears, and young Ascanius justly may complain of his defrauded and destined reign. Even now the herald of the gods appeared. Waking I saw him, and his message heard. From Jove he came commissioned, heavenly bright with radiant beams, and manifest to sight. The sender and the sent I both attest. These walls he entered, and those words expressed. Fair queen, oppose not what the gods command. Forced by my fate, I leave your happy land. So, we have Dido hearing about what Aeneas has done. In fact, she was the first one to find out. She knew something was going on, right? And she's kind of going crazy, just like these women dance for Bacchus at their festival for him. And she finds the dear perfidious, this treacherous man, and says, base and ungrateful. Did you think you could really leave secretly? Did you not think I would know what's going on? Is it such a small deal to you that you're causing my death by what you're doing? What, are you going back to Troy? Are you going to go back to Troy in the middle of winter because you hate me that much? If I have ever been kind to you, pity me. If you leave me by myself here, who am I going to have left? Where can I go to? Am I going to go to my brother who's trying to kill me? Am I going to go to Hyarba, who I rejected? Yeah, he's certainly going to welcome me and help me out, huh? At least delay your parting. At least leave me pregnant so that I can have a son that looks like his father and I can remember you by. And if you only give me that, I won't complain about anything else. And so, she's crying. She's distraught. And Aeneas replies, obviously not how she was hoping. He is unmoved, completely does not respond to her emotional outpouring, and at length replies, "Fair queen." I mean, he is maybe not emotionless, right? He's probably trying to be tender here, but this is what he says. Hey, number one, I wasn't trying to leave in secret. Number two, I never pretended to be your husband. You might have called it that. I never said we were married. Ouch, right? And number three, if I could go anywhere, I would go back to Troy in a heartbeat. Yeah, you're right. I totally would. I would go back and look at the burned down Troy, and I would be there and rebuild that. But fate is driving me elsewhere. And so if you are allowed to build your empire here, if you are a stranger from afar coming to this place to build up Carthage, then why can we, strangers from afar, not go and build up Rome? And plus, and this is not really clear if he's fabricating this part, but my father's ghost is appearing to me every night and chiding me for staying here. And we're not told that by Virgil anywhere. So maybe it happened, but maybe he's just making that up. But he does say, yeah, the gods came and told me just last night that I needed to leave here. And so he ends the conversation with, "Fair queen, don't oppose what the gods command. I'm being forced by fate to leave your happy land." So we'll see how she responds.